Thank you, Allison. Thank you for asking. It's truly a humbling experience to be asked to speak, certainly at this meeting with so many people that I regard as my spiritual mentors, people that I've learned so much from over the years, including yourself. And yes, my group is BYOC, Bring Your Own Coffee. We're a small group that used to meet in person in Rochelle, but we meet exclusively online now. Simply because, meeting attendance dropped considerably. When we went online, we started to attract people that were in want and need of this message, right? That's carried in this book so beautifully. To qualify quickly, my sobriety date is April 24th, 1998. I came into this fellowship and I was desperate. And I joined what was a good solid group in the area, and I went through the steps. And I had a spiritual awakening, or as much as I guess I was capable of having at the time. And the obsession to drink and use was lifted in time, And I practiced, the steps to the best of my ability, or at least as much as I thought I needed to. Life got busy and I got married and I had kids and I stayed involved with my group. But I reached a place where, and I was unaware of it, but I was really suffering from untreated alcoholism. I couldn't tell you that at the time, but I could tell you that I was restless, irritable, and discontented most of the time. I could leave an AA meeting and go home and have maybe, I don't know, a half an hour of peace until my kids started to annoy me, until my wife started to get on my nerves, until I started to maybe lash out in anger. And because just life wasn't going my way and people weren't doing what I thought they should do. And I spent a number of years in that state and looked for relief, going back, trying to find relief in the steps and trying to work with other people. And then, I just found myself really kind of accepting that this is as good as it gets. Maybe this is just as good as it gets. I didn't understand what I didn't understand. And there was no one around me at that time that could take me to that next level, So fast forward in 2018, I ran into, life came at me hard. Okay, my wife got sick and passed away inside of a year. And I found myself in this place of despair and self-pity. And now, where I went from bad to worse, depression and all of these, the pains of the world, were on me. And I had a hard time just, getting myself out of bed. My eyes would open. I was riddled with fear, just riddled with fear. I did start praying a lot more. That's one thing that sometimes events like that will force you to do. I knew, I completely understood the word powerlessness, as I watched, my wife, pass away. So here I am in this place of despair and pain, and I go out to this meeting in New Rochelle. We made a Saturday morning meeting. It was early, and I went into the meeting, and I meet this guy, and he looks at me, and I'll kind of fast forward this. He says, "You look like you're in a lot of pain, And I shared a little bit, and he says, "You want to go through the steps?" And I said to him, "Thank you very much. It's kind of you, but I've been through the steps a number of times with a bunch of different sponsors, and I appreciate it, but thanks." And he says, "No, listen, I've been in that kind of pain, and I was sober for 18 years, and my sponsor came back from Florida and was changed. He had this new understanding, and he took me through the work, and I had a new experience, and maybe that'll happen for you as well." And that's what he did. He took me through the steps. We went through them quickly, and suddenly, my eyes opened to this information that was always there, that either I was unwilling or incapable of understanding, most likely unwilling. I wanted just as much of sobriety that would get me by. I wanted just as much as God that I needed in a pinch. And I didn't understand, anything that was really in this book. other than going through these rudimentary steps mechanically to try to think that I'm going to get to a place where I'm going to somehow be able to run my life. And that's pretty much what it was. So I go through this work and I start to have these little epiphanies, and it's like the whole world kind of comes alive, and he stresses to me the importance of working with other people. And we're online now, and we're having these meetings, and we're getting these great speakers coming in, and people are attracted, and they're jumping on our site, and we're taking more people through the work. And I start seeing this program in action, and mostly people that have been around, they've been around and they're sick and suffering in the rooms. And they're having this new experience and they're coming alive. And you know, and I met Alice along the way, and I think she turned me on to Never Too Early, and I hear Teresa, and I'm just, you know, and Ollie, and I'm hearing all of these people, and I'm like, wow, this whole world of people that are on this other path, this other path that I didn't know existed. I didn't know anybody on this path. Because in my group, it was pretty much just don't drink and go to meetings. And if life is tough, double up your meetings. And if your ass falls off, throw it in a bag and bring it to a meeting. And I knew that there, you know, it wasn't cutting it. It wasn't working for me. So here I am. I kind of have two sobrieties here. So in 2019, I go back through the book. The pandemic hits in 2020. And now that, you know, we go onto Zoom, and I'm exposed to all these wonderful speakers with all this information, all this knowledge and experience, and I get the benefit of this. On the reading, you know, it says, perhaps one of the greatest rewards of meditation, prayer, is the sense of belonging, italicized, that comes to us. So I started thinking about that word belonging, you know, and what context it's had in my life and in my sobriety. And certainly early on, you know, this belonging was this reluctant acceptance that I had to belong to this group of freaks, you know, that I wanted no business, you know, knowing or being with, you know, but I knew that I had nowhere else to go, right? And so, you know, I belonged to the fellowship, you know, under protest, you know, under protest. And as I go through this process and I start to become aware of what I suffer from, and I go through the steps, you know, I start to kind of want to belong. I know I need to belong, but again, it's still out of necessity that I need to belong, you know, because I'm afraid to stray away from this. And in the steps, you know, as I move through, you know, through 1 through 9, you know, and I make my amends, and I start to experience some of this freedom that they speak of, right? And I start to have some of the promises come into my life. You know, it tells me to step 10 that I continue to watch for these manifestations of self that'll take me right back there, right? And then in step 11, I'm to seek, you know, to seek God, you know, conscious contact with God, continue that, right? But again, I'm still limited by my willingness to have more God in my life, you know. Someone that I really enjoy listening to, and I joined one of his meetings on Monday night, you know, he says, you know, I need to be open-minded. You know, it's one of the requirements, right? One of the essentials of recovery is they talk about in the spiritual experience, or the requirements for a spiritual experience is, you know, this willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness. And he says, perhaps we want to be open-minded to the fact that I'm closed-minded about many things. When I think I'm open-minded, I'm by definition closed-minded, you know. And that concept of me constantly keeping me in this place where I have to constantly examine my thinking, you know, and to make sure that I'm, you know, I am as open-minded as I'm capable of being, you know, to these new concepts. So I got a little off track there. So early on, you know, I'm belonging to this fellowship that, you know, really out of desperation and out of fear of not belonging, and me going at it by myself. And then eventually that gets transformed as I go through this process. I go through it several times, and these these surrenders continue to happen, and I start to understand more of what I truly suffer from. How the selfishness shows up in me, and how my old ideas prevent me from growing. This idea that that I need to have control over everything. That I have to agree with the way my life goes. That it's got to be acceptable to me, and if it's not, then I'm in a continual state of unhappiness, and discord. And these transitions that took a long time for me to wrap my head around as to, they're going to happen. Either I'm going to go along with it willingly and find power and peace, or I'm going to get dragged along. And that's been my experience, So this motivation to continue to seek, a stronger relationship with God, and this power that saved my life, first starts out of desperation, and through practicing and exercising these actions, these spiritual muscles, as we talk about, me taking these actions that I don't always agree with or understand or want to do, that I benefit. I'm the recipient of the benefits of these actions, even though I don't see how they're going to help me at that time. It says we're no longer to live in a hostile world. Well, my world was hostile largely because I was in it as an untreated alcoholic. I brought that hostility. I brought it everywhere I went because, living on a continual sense of unsatisfied demands that are impossible to satisfy. Nothing could be good enough. If I had what I thought I wanted more. It wasn't the right kind. So again, this understanding and a further understanding of what I truly suffer from. This continual dissatisfaction with life. And myself is really where the good comes. I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. It's never going to be okay. These are old ideas. Wherever they came from, I don't know. It doesn't really matter. The fact is that I have to recognize that I have them, and that subconsciously they drive me through the day. And unless I'm, practicing these disciplines in step 10 and watching for this stuff, this for years, I was walking through life driven by this stuff and wondering why things never changed, because I can never get out of my own self. I could never step outside and just look at what's actually, what are my thoughts? What am I thinking? Where is that coming from? What, is that true? Is that serving me? And I found out, and again, through going through this work and being on these, meetings and listening to you all in your experience, that I could say, you know what, that is me, and I am doing it. And that's exactly me. And no, it's not serving me. So then if not, then what? What's my choice? And I realized that I had this fear of a deeper relationship with God, because it was scary, that if there is this creator, and I didn't deny the fact that there's something beyond this universe, but this desire to have this intimate relationship with this power that I can't see or touch or define or really know or confirm is there, right? But yet I could experience things happening in my life, that was intimidating, and still can be, So this sense of belonging, and again, this, this change that occurs as a result of going through the steps and continuing to practice, on a daily basis, the disciplines of 10, 11, and 12. And this desire to grow and to change, this desire to become what I could be with God's help. I think it's somewhere in step 5 or something. It talks about the definition of humility is a clear understanding and recognition of exactly who and what I am. Can I see the truth about myself? It's a question I have to ask myself every day. Am I really seeing the truth about me? As I show up at work, as I show up in the car, as I show up wherever I show up, when I show up at home, when in my interactions with my family, with clients, with neighbors, with everyone, can I really see the truth in that? And sometimes it's very subtle stuff, but I start to spot judgment. I start to spot small resentments. I start to spot envy. I start to spot lust, which I never, ever paid attention to. I just thought that they were normal. If it happens in my mind, it's normal. And it's a human condition, but for this alcoholic, this is the stuff that drives me, into that place of despair eventually, if it's left unchecked. So, having tapped into this power that has saved me from this certain death from the gates of hell, right? I now have to go into this venture of exposing myself and availing myself to this power and allowing this unknown experience that I don't know what's going to happen to come in and help me. And that in itself, was one of my biggest challenges, is the fear of letting go of what I think I know about myself, right? This stranglehold that I had, that this definition of me and and what life is supposed to be like. And I didn't realize how anchored that was in my belief system, and that is basically fundamentally me. And the chipping away at that. And what if you just let go of that idea for a moment? What would happen? What would happen if God really were powerful and working in your life in your favor at all times? What if, And same, one of my mentors that I really appreciate, he says, we got to aim higher. What if you aimed higher? What if? And that thought, hit me. It was, where am I holding myself back? Intentionally or subconsciously. It's never usually intentionally, but it's there. And how am I keeping myself from this experience that they talk about in this book? Being rocketed into the fourth dimension of existence, losing, fear of people, economic insecurity, all of these promises that are just so wonderful, and having an altruistic mind, the concern for others, that goes on to say after this, it says, we are no longer lost, frightened, and purposeless. My sponsor used to say to me, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. And that's the way I wandered through life, just trying to manage whatever happened, because I had no real plan. I really didn't. This justice that I can now see that the truth, me being able to see the truth about me, my life, and the rights of everyone else in this world to be here as they are. And then I've got to figure out a way to exist and be useful in this world. It's not for them to change, it's for me. That I'm no longer lost, I have a purpose, I'm not frightened, as much, because I found a source, that can take that fear and show me that it's a lie. It's a lie. It's my old thinking coming back. And that if, God is powerful, all powerful, if he wanted me dead, he would have smote me a long time ago. I certainly gave him plenty of reasons, right? So again, it starts to kind of make sense that, what, as I start to abandon some of this old thinking, and I start to just have a desire to not just belong to the fellowship of AA, but the fellowship of the Spirit. That's really what it is. This road gets narrower. And if I take the actions that you all take, I should stand a shot at living this life. It's just truly amazing. That I have a new purpose, I have a new job, I'm uniquely qualified to carry a message in this book to someone sick and suffering, that we can help avert death and misery for them. I mean, what more of a purpose, could you possibly want? Anyway, I'm kind of running out of steam here. I think I'm going to stop there. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
What a question. Thank you, Alice. And, that's the $1,000,000 question, right? Is how do we help someone, get to the place, without having to go through the pain? Uh, And the same thing for getting sober, right? I mean, but I don't know the answer to that question. All I can do is share, experience and hopefully if we're having the conversation in the first place and, um, we're maybe talking about alcoholism and other issues, and that we have an opportunity by going through the work that to shed light on some of this stuff and point some, find some intrigue perhaps. But I think it's one of those individual journeys. I really don't know the answer to that. I wish I did, that we could just instill this desire in people to want to aim higher, to want to, yes, I want that. The alcoholic ego, right? It's just so strong in me. I don't know. I know that until I was ready, I wouldn't have been ready, right? But I try. We all try. I know. But thanks. Thank you so much for asking.
Thank you so much, Alice. Just before we go to the next hand up, I had a question in the chat right away. It's from Jason, Florida. He said, can you ask him what changed since he had already done the steps? What made this time so different?
Well, for one, I had teachers that could really explain in depth, particularly the goal of the fourth step, right? Going deeper and following the directions. That was one thing. So the information, that I gleaned from, doing a fifth step with a sponsor after a thorough inventory in all areas of my life as it's laid out, and it was a much different experience. So that awakening to, wow, that is me, was profound versus the first time I went through that, where I didn't have that direction, didn't follow the directions I tried to. My sponsor couldn't even explain it to me, really. He told me to write an autobiography. I tried to go into the book and glean what I could out of it to cross-reference. And I got enough out of it at the first time that I was able to move forward and go through amends and things like that, where the obsession to drink and use was removed, but I didn't get enough information. And maybe I wouldn't have been able to see it then. I don't know, but a better understanding is really what it was, and someone being able to personalize this for me, to ask, listening to people like Mark Houston and Joe Hawk and all of these other, great speakers and you guys, and hearing this experience, the explosion of Zoom, and unfortunately the pandemic is as tragic as it was for so many. This has been, the catalyst for myself and so many other people that I know, where we get exposed to, these wonderful speakers and this information experience, so, a lot of it came from desire, and out of need and desire, and then, when the student's ready, the teachers appear, and thank God, that you're all here. I don't know if that answered your question.
Okay, so thank you so much, Jeffrey, for your question. Russell Coldwater, come on up, brother.
Hey, everybody. Russell, grateful recovering alcoholic. Thank you, Doug. Wow. I knew I needed a meeting tonight, and this is the one I needed. It's funny how God makes that happen. Anyway, I mean, your whole talk was amazing. I was particularly engaged in the beginning. You were talking a bit about open-mindedness and your constant challenging of that, like learning to constantly be questioning yourself. Am I truly remaining open-minded, including your example of, the point of acknowledging that, that not being open-minded is being open-minded to the possibility that you're not open-minded. Like, that's a profound insight. I was just wondering, are there specific prayers or tools or other readings like around that you would refer somebody to? Like, I'm familiar with the set aside prayers, what jumped into my mind, that's part of my, not every day, but I was just wondering if you had any other, if anything else specifically helped you in that regard.
Well, I mean, there's a ton of books, that I have stacks of, that my morning readings and things like that. And everybody, whatever works for you. I mean, the book says, that there's suggestions, can be had from any priest, minister, or rabbi, make use of what they offer, so there's plenty of information out there. If I want to grow along spiritual lines, I might want to think about what they're reading, right? What they're doing. That wasn't terribly complicated, but I do, there are some meditation groups, online. There's tons of them in the morning. I joined one at 6:45 every morning. We say prayers, and there's a meditation and a song at the end, and then I do some readings, and I sit quietly for a few minutes. And meditation's been a struggle over the years for me, but again, it's one of those things that practice. I would say to myself, oh, I can't get myself still for that long. My mind wanders, and they're really just, for me, excuses to really not put in the effort. But as I continued to practice, it got easier. And I need to find those times where I can be quiet. Dr. Bob's desk had a plaque about humility, and he talks about, being able to find, to find that peace and quiet inside, and I can take those moments sometimes during the day where I can just, through practice, just quiet down and spend a few minutes just in quiet, and find, my goal is to try to stay connected, not just in the morning. So, I mean, I set alarms for myself on my phone, talk to God, because I need it. I need the reminders, because me on my own, I walk out the door, and it could be 15 minutes, it could be 3 hours. It doesn't matter. I'm separated. I'm going to be separated. That's just been my experience. I just have to, have the reminders to connect, and I have the desire to connect, because from the action, I have an experience. From the experience, I have faith that it works, and I continue and build on that. So there are all kinds of tools out there, but books, there's plenty of great books out there. So yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Prayer, St. Francis prayer, I go through them all.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Russell. Deb, come on up.
I'm Debbie, and I'm an alcoholic. Doug, that was just a fantastic share. I really appreciated your approach. And I don't know if you did this on purpose, but you weave questions throughout your talk, and that it helped me really to go inside a little deeper. The question I have, and the question I was most intrigued that you mentioned, is what if you aimed higher? What if you aimed higher? Tell me, what does that look like for Doug?
What that looks like for me is, it comes as the result of diligent, inventory and seeking, conscious contact with God, is when I'm out of self, and I'm not always there for sure. And I go on these little spurts, but aiming higher, allows me to, what does it look like? I mean, it's just, I'm not living so much in myself. I'm not experiencing these human traits, I'm not experiencing the fear so much. I'm not experiencing, all of these, my defects of character that display themselves, on any given day in any given situation. I can sit and feel at peace, and I can feel at ease. I can feel optimism. I can look forward to the day. I can look forward to new situations. I can look forward to the unknown, knowing, that everything's okay and I'm going to be okay. Because I have this belief that I have this belief that I've taken a position, right? I've taken a position. God is a principal. He's the director. He's the father. And when I can stay in that place, for me, that's aiming high.
I think, Philip, you there?
Yeah, my internet's really choppy.
Do you want me to take over for a little bit, brother?
Yeah, but please.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you, Doug, for your answer. Calvin, would you come on up, please, brother?
Hello, everyone. My name's Calvin, and I'm an alcoholic, and it's good to be here tonight. And Doug, what a good message, And the question I have is that a close family member died at the beginning of the year. A person who's been around me all my life. My mother raised them, and they've been around good people, good, solid people. And she passed in the beginning of the year. And I went to her funeral yesterday, and after the funeral, I came back home. And I got a chance to ride in the limo because but anyway. And found out her son, who took care of her, who was always there. He had his own home. He took care of his mom every day. And we got back from that funeral. He couldn't go, and got back, and they found him dead. And I felt uncomfortable, this undercurrent running last day or so. It's all day today anyway. Nothing is stopping me from doing what I need to do. But I felt this undercurrent. These people have been a part of my life all my life. And I was wondering, when you talked about your wife passing, did you feel that kind of feeling? I'm not trying to rubble that up for you too much, but did you feel that kind of feeling? And how did you navigate through that?
The feeling of
just losing some people that I figured that I could have did better, and I could have did some things a little bit, showed up a little more. But my family was private. It was very private people.
Yeah, I mean, there's always, well, I could just speak for myself. There was remorse, there was some regret, having lived in this untreated alcoholism, and being not so pleasant to be around, being a catalyst for our marriage to be difficult, to have friction, to not be a solution, to be an antagonist, and feeling justified in that. And I don't know where we would have headed, had she not gotten sick. I don't know. But in the state that I was in, I was certainly not part of the solution to the problem. So there were these regrets, when someone gets sick, and someone that I do love, all that went out the window quickly. And afterwards, there was, without a doubt, times where I regret and I have remorse that I didn't, why couldn't I see it? Why couldn't I recognize this? Why did I waste so many years? Was I part of her, unhappiness that maybe led to her sickness? I don't know. This is thoughts that would go through my mind. So, I mean, I think that's natural, but again, I go to God. And, it's not for me to figure it out. I figured out that my job is to put the next foot in front of the other, and be there for my family, my kids, and to try to continue on and get on the path to grow and understanding and effectiveness, as they say, right? So I don't know. I hope that helped.
Thank you so much, Doug. I appreciate that. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Doug. Howard and or Kathy, come on up, please. Go ahead.
Thanks, Ali. Thanks all the little army of people in the background. Thank you, Doug. As we hear in the rooms, what comes from the heart touches the heart, and that's exactly what you did tonight. My name is Kathy. I'm an alcoholic, and thank you for saying yes to be a demonstration of this omnipotence of the power. Yeah, my question is, how you talked a lot about the watching we do in 10 and the asking and the turning. How impactful when we do that diligently throughout our day has that been in regards to do like a nightly inventory and corrective measures? I don't know if that's to learn essentially in when we do that at night. I don't know if that makes sense, Doug. How impactful has your 10th been for your 11th?
Oh, it's everything. For years, I never, I never took it. I never did an inventory. I did the spot check inventory. When I was disturbed, when crisis already happened, when the explosion when the bomb had gone off already, then I would do an inventory, and so doing a nightly inventory, and I use a graph mostly, that has some things for me to look for. Was I resentful? Was I selfish? Was I dishonest? Was I, and it's got an expanded list, and I can ask myself and try to reflect on my day, and it doesn't take very long to do. And then it also has assets below. It's very much, anyway, I see the good and I see the bad, right? Where I could have done better. So that in 11, I can go to God and ask him, what corrective measures should be taken. I can pray to have, to have these things removed. I see them, I'm aware of them. And then the next day when I go out, and or the next night when I do another inventory, if I was dishonest the day before, I really don't want to be checking that box the next day. So it kind of cues me up during the day to watch for that, because I start seeing that 3 or 4 days on my inventory, and I'm like, dude, I see a problem, and I don't want to check that box. So it kind of brings it to the forefront for me. But if I never look, then guess what? There's nothing wrong here, And I spent 15 years doing that, and suffered a lot as a result. But so yeah, it's the two are interwoven, But thank you.
Thanks, Doug.
If I might, is that okay? Okay. You said something that really made me, you said a lot of things. Thank you very much. And thank you for, Kathy said all the little people behind the scenes, and I'm picturing all these little people, 3-foot people running around and taking care of things. And thank you very much, all you big people behind the scenes, as well as the little folks. But you said something about entering this period, this dark period. And I went through the same thing. I've celebrated 10-year anniversaries 3 times in recovery. And when I came back from my last relapse in 2006, I was bound and determined to do things the way I was told to do it. No questions, no nothing. But I was very cautious approaching my 10th anniversary that last time. And things started happening. I started losing people. Somewhere between the 8th and the 10th year of this last run, I lost 4 or 5 people closest to me. I don't have a lot of friends. I don't have a lot of people around me. I lost 4 to 5 people, 5 entities closest to me. One of them was my dog of 12 years, my best friend. I lost him. And I went into that depression. I pulled the covers over my head, and I only got out when I had to go to a meeting or something. And there's a question here. I'm leading up to it. You went through it, and I was listening to a tape the other day where Mark Houston pointed out how unusual it is to see people with 30 years sobriety, 25 years sobriety. Why is that? Why is it that we see people more with 5 years and 10 years? Something happens in there. Mark Houston talks about when he had 9 years sobriety, he checked himself into a nut house because that things were coming apart on him. And I went through it around that same time, and you went through it around that same time. And I'm wondering, what is it about long-term sobriety that, we run into this wall, we're doing the right things, and then we go into this dark period, and some of us just don't come out of it. You came out of it, I came out of it, he came out of it. But so many people go into that in that 8th, 9th, 10th year, and we don't see them anymore. How do you account for that? What happens in long-term sobriety that sends people into this darkness?
I don't know that I'm qualified to answer that, but I can speak for myself. I can only say that, I thought I was practicing the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and, I was, another speaker I really enjoy says, I was doing everything. I was doing everything the program told me to do, except for the things I didn't want to do. That was me. I was willing to have just enough God that I thought would get me by. I just was refusing to fully abandon myself to this simple program. And I think, when they talk about utterly and abandon and all these words, I think they mean them. But I read them with a bias. I read them with a filter and go, yeah, but that doesn't really apply to me. Or this is enough abandonment on my part, because I haven't yet suffered. I haven't fully seen my capabilities of destroying my life entirely. Sober without a drink. I'm still, I don't know. I mean, there's people I know in 25 years sobriety, they go hang themselves in the woodshed, put a gun in their mouths. One guy walked into Ocean Beach, or City Island, middle of winter last year or year before. People with time, I don't know why. It's a great question, Howard. I don't know. I think, as they talk about, the road gets narrower and this, for me, accepting and depending upon God, absolute reliance upon God. And as much as I'm capable of it, that the realization that all my pain and struggle is it's somewhere. Mark Houston talks about, well, where am I agnostic in my life? Where am I keeping God out? And that's always seems to be the case for me. But and I, thank God that I got to that place. I don't know why, but I did, and just grateful for it. And you're a big part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Howard and Kathy. Thank you, Doug. I think I'll be the last one. I had to put my hand. Doug, first of all, I just want to thank you very much for just for such a beautiful, humble, love-filled message. I always say this big book is a couple of inches thick, and it's just writings on some paper. You know what I mean? You can get a nice, really smart English lit student to come and give a better talk than anyone in AA, but this book only becomes thousands of kilometers deep when someone like you comes here and humbly pours their heart out on it. Thank you so much for doing that. I really appreciate it you shared today. I'll make my question quick. You talked about depression. I haven't recently experienced anybody close to me passing away, but I have experienced in depression, deep depression, both before and inside recovery. I guess it's a two-part question. One is, when you were in the depths of despair, when you just couldn't get out of bed those days, like, what were some of the little things that you would do to stay in action of seeking? Like, if you can share that with us, if you don't mind. And then the other thing was, I'm just curious, was your coming out of this depression, was it a instantaneous kind of event after you went through the steps, or was it a progression? If you could give us a description of that, what that was like, please. Thank you so much.
Well, answer to the last question, it was a slow progression. One of the things that was instrumental was me working with others, was getting into this book and looking for others sick and suffering and trying to help them, and it helped to catapult me out of myself, which is where I exist. Self-pity is selfish. It's one of the greatest forms, right? I would sit there in this self-pity and this depression. And one of the things I did early on was out of, and I didn't know what else to do. I'd yet to go through the book again, and I would go out into my car and I'd flip on, Joel Osteen. I'd turn on the radio. I'd listen to, to anybody that would be talking about God or something that would help save me. Any message that would lift me, because I needed something. I knew I needed it. I was, in a bad place. So sometimes it was just getting out to the car and sitting in the car and flipping on the radio. Early on, that's about all I could do, but it was helpful. It was helpful. It gave me just enough help to get myself back out of the door and to put another foot in front of the other. Yeah, it